Hello children, I am Sudhanshu Sinha. Since a lot of us will be meeting for the first time, and in the first video that I'm going to do, we're going to talk about a poem, the first poem back in your 12th standard, and that is called My Mother at 66 by Kamala Das. In this poem, you'll realize that Kamala Das, who's a very sensitive daughter, talks about her bereavement from her mother as she separates and goes to her in-laws' place, to her husband's place. We realize that how a daughter who realizes that she should be with her parents in their old age is unable to stay there. The guilt of not being with the parents when they need her the most, for somebody who's done so much for her, the repeated separations of a daughter from her own family, her attachments with them, and how she is able to see the imminent future of what her mother has, and that is being in her old age and her eventual death. So we'll read about Kamala Das from the text. She was born in Malabar in Kerala. She is recognized as India's foremost poets. Her works are known for their originality, versatility, and the indigenous flavor of the soil. Of the several stories that she's written under the Malayalam name Madhavi Kutti, and she is deemed a sensitive writer who captures the complex subtleties of human relationships in a lyrical idiom. My Mother at 66 is one such example. Now, before we read, the author suggests that we must try to understand that aging is a natural process and that elderly parents have certain expectations from us, and what are they, and do we as children fulfill them? So let's give a read to the poem and see what the poet is trying to talk to us. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doors open mouths, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away and looked out at the young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked at her again, wan, pale, as late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma," and all I did was a smile and smile and smile. Now, a very simple, straightforward poem which carries depths and layers of meaning that we need to unfold as we try to understand it line-wise. The poet has used contrasting imagery to bring out the differences or the contrast in the moods as she is traveling with her mother beside her in a car from her parental home to her in-laws' home, that is back to her husband's place, and is on her way to the Cochin airport from her village home. So it says, driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning. The very opening line or the part of the line gives us the setting of the poem, and it tells us that the poem is set in a car which is being driven from the poet's parental place, from her native place, to the Cochin airport a week prior to her writing this poem. So when she's writing this poem, she's already reminiscing that what she could have done to stay a bit longer, and has she actually done enough with her mother being old and requiring her assistance. So this poem has been written as an aftermath of a visit to her parental place. And there is an act of seeing here. I saw my mother beside me, doors open-mouthed. Now immediately we are struck by the contrast of driving and her mother dozing. Driving talks about kinetic or movement, while dozing talks about stillness, being stationary, or torpidity. So we're saying that right from the very beginning, the poet is using contrasting imagery to bring out the mood of the poem, which is a contrast. Because this poem itself is contrasting to her natural instinct. So she says, she saw her mother beside her, doze open mouths. Now, dozing would have sufficed, but she goes on to say how the mother was dozing. She's trying to convey to us that she was dozing with her mouth open. Now, that is something very unbecoming of a lady. Because most of the time, if you've observed, people are actually aware of how they're sleeping. It's only when they're entering in their old age or when they become senile enough that they forget about such mannerisms or how they appear and put themselves out to the world. So, with her mouth open is suggesting that she has become senile, she's pretty old now, and has become sort of careless with age about the social norms and etiquettes. And her face, she notices, is ashen like that of a corpse. Now the color ashen comes from the word ash. Ash is greyish in color. Now greyish is a dull color. So what the poet is suggesting is that the face of a mother, the skin color has become pale. It is no longer as vibrant and young as it once used to be. Here I'd like to add, if you really want to read another such poem about something which is on the similar theme, then you should read A.K. Ramanujan's poem of Mother Among Other Things. It's a beautiful poem. Again, a slightly complex poem as it comes across, but definitely one read that you must have. So, she's comparing by using a simile. She says, like that of a corpse. So she's likening her mother to that of a corpse. Corpse is a dead body. So let us see what all words we've encountered so far. We talk about driving as contrasted with dozing. Driving contrasted with dozing. And there's a comparison like that of a corpse, and she realized with pain that she was as old as she looked and soon put that thought away. Now it is actually very unsavory for any child to think about their parents' death. And whenever such a thought does cross the mind of children, because you see, one point or the other time, there's so much of death and devastation happening all around us. And we, as we grow, do become fully aware of the cycle of life, and we realize that yes, death is inevitable and it will come when it will come. And you cannot run from it. And then at a point of time in our own lives, we start accepting death as something which is going to happen. So we don't run away from it, we accept it. And with that acceptance, because we care so much about our loved ones, we keep thinking about their well-being, and our mind being so fertile and avid and so full of miserable things that we see on television and read in the newspapers and that happen around us and are reported, we are sometimes so full of negative that we think of the deaths of our own near and dear ones and our loved ones. But once we do that, we kind of erase it from our head instantly, because it is such a wrong thing to think. I mean, it's very troublesome to think of your parents dying and what would be the scenario in case they're not around us. So it is a terrible thought to live with. It's a terrible thought to have. And the minute and it's happened to all of us. At one point or the other, we have, in one way or the other, imagined what would happen if our parents are not around. And we have only realized that it is a painful thought, not just to try to imagine the scenario, but having the thought itself can be very depressing. So we try to erase it, literally, like from the whiteboards of our minds, we try to remove that thought. And so did the poet try. After she's daughter to a mother. And she tried to put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting. And in order to take her mind off, she tried to look at the trees outside the moving car's window. And what did she realize? She realized that the young trees were sprinting. Now again, she could just simply have said the trees were sprinting, but she uses the adjective young. Again, suggesting a contrast. Young is contrasted with old age of the mother. Young is contrasted with the old age of the mother. The merry children spilling out of their homes. Again, children would have sufficed, but she talks about children as being merry. So, merry is contrasted against her own pain of realizing that her mother would soon be not around for her. But after the airport's security check, now before we move forward, we'll encounter another figure of speech, which is personification. We see here that the trees are personified because we are told that they are sprinting. Sprinting is again a human quality. It is like running purposefully at a high speed. All the trees are not doing that because motion is relative. As you move forward in one direction, the things which are outside the moving vehicle will seem to go in the opposite direction. So trees are actually there, but they seem to appear to the poet as sprinting. So that is personification. Trees sprinting is personification. But after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away. And now she's telling us that she has reached the airport, she has gone into security clearance, and she's standing a few yards away, as is shown in the little caricature which is drawn with the poem, that she is waving at her mother and she again looks at her. So this act of looking again and again by the daughter at her mother is suggesting an acute bond between the two, a very strong bond between the two, which is of course evident. It is one of the most beautiful relationships in a family, that between a daughter and a mother. So the daughter looks at her mother again. This act of looking at her mother shows her a different picture this time. Again, different, but still and yet the same. And how's that? She looked at her and she realized that her mother is waning. Her mother is waning. Now here the wane, W-A-N, the word wan. Here the word wan is suggesting fading. Wan is suggesting somebody is fading, reducing in intensity. Reducing in intensity or vitality. This word you would have encountered in your geography lessons when you read about the phases of the moon. So what happens is, this is a full moon, this is a new moon, there is no moon, there is a full moon. Here the moon is waxing, means increasing in size. This is the phases of moon. Phases of moon, waxing moon, and then after waxing moon, you have a waning moon. Again, it goes and reduces down to a new moon. From new moon, it becomes a full moon and then becomes a new moon. So as it becomes a new moon, it fades or lightens away in intensity, reduces in size. That is why this word has been used to talk about her mother's reducing vitality. The age is finally catching up with her mother and she realizes it and therefore compares her mother to the pale winter's moon. She says she was as pale as a late winter's moon. So again we see a comparison of the mother using as. So again this is a simile, as a late winter's moon. This again becomes a simile, and now here we also encounter a metaphor. Metaphor is winter's moon. So winter's moon. Here the word winters is suggesting old age. End. So it is suggesting old age and end. In literature, if you compare the seasons of the year, it is generally assumed that the early part of the year, although ending in winter, begins with spring. So spring is akin to childhood. Summer is youth. Autumn is maturity. And winter is old age and death. So she's comparing her mother to winter's moon. Now if you've also noticed in the sky through the year, the summer moon, the ones that is available, you can see in the sky nowadays, is very bright and white and brilliant. But as it goes down through the year in October and September and November, you see it becomes yellowish, paler in color, and down in December and in January, it's almost yellowish and orangish. So the intensity of the moon reduces over the year as the winters come in, then the spring comes and again revives into a fresh young moon, and that is the comparison which is being done here. So she's comparing her mother to a late winter's moon, and she felt very pained. She says she felt that old familiar ache. Now the familiar pain, the ache that she's talking about, is her childhood's fear. The worst fear of a child, as a child, is being separated from the parents. And that is what this child, this daughter who's now married and settled at her husband's place, is reminded of. She is pained to think of the separation, the final separation from her mother, because she somehow realizes that her mother will not be around for long. She was going to die any time now. And what if the daughter isn't around to see the last of her mother? Because she is bound by her marital duties and has to leave her old and aging and senile mother and go to her husband's place, where she has to perform her marital duties to her family. So this is the dilemma of a daughter. Which is her home? The home where she was born and brought up? Who are her parents? The parents who gave her birth and nurtured her to grow into a fine human being? Or her husband's home and her husband's parents, which is now her adopted married family? And the separation that the daughter has to undergo when she moves and leaves her parents' home and goes to her in-laws' place, to her husband's place, to adopt and adapt to that family, severing the bonds of love and doting that she has formed over the years with her own parents in the house that she was born in. And that is the familiarity of the pain that the daughter is now experiencing as she has to make this difficult choice of leaving her old, aging mother and going to her husband's home. And that is why she finds it familiar, because she's experienced it before, earlier in her life as well. As a child when left in the school for the first day, as a daughter who had to move out of the village or the small town she lived in to a city to go and study, as a daughter who was married off and separated, and as a mother, because she herself could be a mother now, and therefore probably is in a better position to understand what her mother feels being separated from their own children. But in her last-ditch effort at the airport, realizing that this could probably be the last time she would see her mother alive, this daughter puts on a very brave face and tells her that she would see her mother soon. She says, "But all I said was, see you soon, Amma." Now, in saying so, she's not only trying to give a false consolation and a reassurance to her mother, but she's also consoling herself that she should be fortunate enough to come and visit her mother one more time before she finally passes, before her mother finally dies and passes away. And that is the longing that she has, to see her mother one more time before her mother is no more. And she says, putting on a brave face, that she would come and see her soon, and all she did was smile and smile and smile. The smiling is very significant here, but first let us realize that we are seeing another example of a figure of speech, and this is called repetition. If you'd allow me, I would reduce this from here, remove it from here, and write repetition. So repetition is smile and smile and smile. Okay? Now, of course, there are alliterations. I'll just help you guys with that. I will write down all the alliterations and the line numbers here. So, now she's smiling. She's putting up a brave face in front of her mother, having reassured herself that she would come back, and trying to reassure her mother that she would come back. She wants, still, there's this overlaying fear in her mind that this might well be the last time, and therefore she wants to leave her mother with the satisfaction that her daughter is happy with her married life and is actually looking forward to returning to her husband's place. In her heart she is sad, but she wants that if this is the last time her mother sees her, then she should go with this satisfaction that the daughter is happy in her in-laws' place, because that's true for a parent. It's sort of an achievement of a lifetime that the children are well settled and happy in their lives. And therefore, the poet leaves her mother with a smile. And if you notice, the poem does not really end. It is simply written with marks of suspension. The 6 dots in the end is not a full stop. Now there's a very pertinent question here. Why there is no full stop in the entire poem? Well, the answer is very simple. The relationship between a mother and child can never come to a full stop. Whether the mother is alive or the child is there or not there, in any case, the relationship continues, because even if somebody's mother is not around, the child will still be a son or daughter to that mother. And no matter how hard you try it, you cannot deny the fact and you cannot run away from this reality that a mother and child's bond is the strongest, most beautiful thing in the entire world. And therefore, the relationship between a mother and a child can never end. So, full stop suggests an end. And therefore, we see that the poet has quite an aversion about full stop, especially in this poem, which talks about so delicately, in such a subtle manner, about this beautiful relationship between the mother and a daughter. Now, for the alliterations that you will encounter in this, let's see, what are those? Let's see in line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you have sprinting, there are quite a few of them, so I'll simply write down the words and you can mark them in your book. So you have sprinting, spilling, this is alliteration of S. Then you have after an airport, after this security and standing, after this the next one is familiar and fear. Familiar and fear, and then set, see, and soon. So these are the alliterations that you encounter in this poem. And that brings us to the end of the poem. I will try to get in touch with you in the next video and maybe take a live session so that we can interact and discuss and vet out this poem. Till then, go through the poem, try to go and go through the video and understand what we're talking about. Try to make notes. You can, with the offline video, you can actually pause and take down notes, and that will be really helpful in understanding the poem and trying to answer the questions that we will look at. Thank you and have a wonderful day.